Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I've learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And being that yesterday's video was highly emotional, I just wanted to kind of do something different today. And it's absolutely beautiful outside. There is not a cloud in the sky, and the trees are bright green, and I was gonna go in my backyard and do a video. I had two different meditation books, and I was actually gonna read from one or the other. I was gonna just kind of randomly pick one as I was doing the video. And I walked outside and I had my camera. I was just gonna actually set it up in the grass and do it. And my neighbor to our right, who we get along with really, really well, and I've kind of made jokes before about the neighbors, you know, if you've watched all my videos, you know I've made, because we live in a neighborhood that's a lot older, but our neighbor to the right is 24, and so we get along with her very well. She's really friendly, and she's a musician and an artist, and she's really cool. So anyway, I walk outside, and she's got this, quilt out in the grass, and she's in a bathing suit, and she's sunning herself, and she's reading Song of Solomon. She's got the music, she's got some jazz music playing, and I was like, hey, how are you? And she was like, hey, it's good to see you. And I had told her that I was going to loan her this book, right? And it's been sitting on the counter, about the Golden State Killer, because we had been talking about it. And so anyway, I said, hey, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I'm just sitting out here enjoying a gin and tonic and reading a book. And I was like, she goes, were you going to make a video out here? And I said, yeah, actually, I kind of was. And she's like, well, I can be quiet for a couple minutes or whatever. I was like, no, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. And it's funny because years ago, I think structure was very important to me. Structure still is very important to me. And when, I make lists and they'll say like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, things that I have to get done in a day. And if I don't get those things done, I feel like very, like my life is disruptive. And, a lot of times I will have to make sure that I'm getting something done because I think, oh, the other person's really worried about it when they don't even really care, if that makes sense, And I'm doing like a live stream interview with somebody today, and it was supposed to be at 4 o'clock. And so I just checked my Twitter, and he had actually messaged me at 9 o'clock in the morning. Well, I chose not to get on Twitter until 3:45 when I'm supposed to go on at 4, or I would have known this. And he said, hey, I'm going to be on for, a couple hours. I'm going to have you guest at 5 o'clock. So I was like, I have a whole other hour that I can like make videos and, drive around and get a coffee and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, this is great. I've got a lot of extra time. But I think that, my perception of floating with the world and the universe has changed over time. And, this is going to sound crazy, okay? But years ago, and not too many years ago, actually, let's say 3 to 5 years ago, and this is a lot of my need to control things, which a lot of addicts and alcoholics really struggle with the need to have control. And when our addiction takes over and we don't have control in certain situations, we feel powerless and we feel like we're out of control. And that has a lot to do with, the unmanageability of the disease of addiction and things like that. So I have fought that my entire life. In fact, one of my best friend Tanya's favorite things to do is put me in a car, not tell me where we're going, and I just have to be a passenger. She's like, you need to not be in control so much, right? Because when I do feel like I'm in control, I feel very safe. And so sometimes I have to practice not being in control. And this channel specifically, is where I come to be completely vulnerable and authentic. And I mean, all of them I do that, right? But on this one, I really just like throw it all out there, the issues that I'm working on, because there's always somebody out there that says, oh my God, I needed to hear this today. I love when I get that comment that they're like, I needed to hear this video today. And so, I had a very regimented schedule for what I wanted to get done today. I had to go get this done, and I had a schedule, and I went and I got all these kind of different things done, and I was talking to a friend on the phone, and we had a very nice conversation, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna get home at 3 o'clock, and then I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna go take a shower, and then, whatever. And so I checked the Twitter, and there's a direct message that says, oh, we're gonna do it at 5 now instead of 4, and I was like, okay. And, so then I was like, well, I'll just make videos now. But I didn't want to set everything up. So I was like, well, instead of setting everything up, I'll just go outside and do one, right? It's a beautiful day. And then she's outside there enjoying it. And, in the moment, I think 5 years ago, to be honest, the way that I would have responded to that would have been irritation. I would have been like, damn it, because, and this is an addict alcoholic thing too, but I do also think it's a human response, that a lot of times we think the world revolves around us, when in reality, here I'm going to tell you a secret, okay? The world does not revolve around you. It just doesn't. And, you know, it's, my mom used to always say, oh, I was here and I think this person was talking. She always thought people were talking about her, you know? And I'd be like, Mom, I hate to bust your bubble, but you're just not that important, okay? Not everybody in the world is talking about you. You're just not that important. And when you realize that, when you realize in the grand scheme of things, I'm just not that important, you know, to yourself you are, and to your friends and family, you're very important. But in the grand scheme of things, you just aren't that important, right? Life can go on, and then you can just kind of float with the universe, and where it's supposed to take you is where it's supposed to take you. And so, you know, instead of looking at it being like, well, damn it, I was going to have this, you know, at 4 o'clock and now it's at 5, I was like, wow, that gives me so much extra time to get stuff done. And, you know, before, because I was worried, like, Alex is going to come home, and I was like, the dogs are going to be barking while I'm trying to, you know, in my head, control everything. I'm sure some of you out there do that, okay? If you've ever been a supervisor, and I was a supervisor, you try to micromanage everything, which is why a lot of supervisors that micromanage don't do real well. For some reason, it worked really well for me, and it's interesting because I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine on the phone, and I was talking about this Netflix documentary that I saw about Todrick Hall. And Todrick Hall is a musician and a choreographer. I love him, and he's on YouTube, and he's really built a successful career, and he's just super talented, right? But I was watching this documentary about him putting his newest album together and his tour, and he has, like, at any given time, like 30 people around him. And I was like telling my friend, I was like, that would drive me nuts. Like, I need to be the one making the decisions, and I couldn't have that many people around me that I had to, like, say, no, you do this. I'm just not good at that, right? So today I walked out and I was talking to her, and she's like, well, I can turn off the music? I was like, no, sweetie. I said, enjoy your day. It's beautiful, you know? And I was like, here, I got some books for you inside. And I went and I got the books, and I went over and I talked to her, and I was asking her what she was doing tonight. And I gave her The Golden State Killer, and then I gave her also She's Come Undone. And I said, you're going to love this book. And so we were talking about it for a second. Had I not allowed myself to just float in the universe, I wouldn't have had this interaction with her. Yesterday, I was on the front porch, and I talked about this in a vlog, and I was kind of like joking about it sarcastically, but it was really actually very nice. I was watching a video of mine back before I posted it. I usually watch most of my videos back before I post them. And one of my neighbors walked up, and she's the one that's in charge of the landscaping. And immediately I thought she was coming up to tell me something about my yard, but our yard looks really good this year, so I knew it couldn't have been about that. And so she came up and she was like, hey, I just wanted to say hi to you. And that's where I immediately, okay, you know, go into this assumption of like, what am I going to say? How am I going to deal with this person or whatever? We ended up sitting there and talking for an hour, which put my videos behind. I wanted to have all my videos done for today so I could just, you know, do this interview and things. Yet again, another need to control things. And we ended up having this really nice conversation, and I got to know one of my neighbors that I had, you know, never really known before. And looking at that, you know, in the last just 2 weeks, I've met like 5 of my neighbors and really felt more at home here. And so my need to not, and that's all come out of like conversations and walking to my car that people stop and talk to me, or, you know, I already knew my neighbor behind here, but, you know, yesterday with the landscaper, somebody at the pool, my need to control things that has gone away, you know, losing that character defect, my need to constantly control things has allowed me to benefit in meeting new people. And that's fantastic, you know? And so I think like in life, when we look at the character defects that we're struggling with, those things that keep us from really, you know, I've always been taught when you have a character defect, whether it's like patience or those kinds of things, you know, patience is a good example. Do the opposite, practice the opposite. So if you're somebody that's impatient, like let's say if you're in line at Speedway, right, at the gas station, and there's like, it's taking forever, I was always taught, you know, allow 2 people to go ahead of you because you'll really be taught patience then, and do that until you learn that lesson. And that's really about, you know, building ourselves as moral individuals and people that have values, because the more you practice the value that you want to have, the better it's just going to come to you. And over time, I have taken a lot of rides in my friend's car and not known where I was going. You know, it's really important for me to like allow Alex to plan things and I just go, you know? And it's really important for me that when plans change, that I just float with the river of life, because the more I do, I'm practicing the opposite of needing to control things. I have no control in those situations, and I need to learn that, you know? Control can just really, it still can be a safe place for me, but I don't have to control things the way that I used to. And, you know, when you look at your character defects, you look at those things that are problematic in your life. You know, I use that word on my main channel a lot, like so-and-so is problematic, or we all have issues of being problematic, okay? We each do. And, you know, when you look at it, whether it's tardiness of being late, or, you know, patience, or anger, or rage, when you look at any of these character defects that we have in our lives, this does not have to just be a recovery thing. This can be for anybody out there. If you start practicing the opposite of that, right? Like if I would have instead, you know, contacted this guy that's interviewing me and been like, I can only do it at 4 o'clock. Or if I had said to her, yeah, please, could you go inside so I can film this video? I wouldn't have allowed myself, you know, to just kind of float with the universe. And life seems to go so much better for me when I float with the universe. In fact, when I look back on the last 20 years of my life, the things that have really stood out to me, that have made a difference in my life, the things that have just been really, really cool that have happened to me, have happened per chance because I've allowed myself to float down this river of life instead of needing to paddle and control where I'm going. So the more that I allow myself to do that, the more that I stop trying to stay in my defects and I try to do the opposite of that, the more I allow myself to grow and remain teachable as a human being, the more good things that come my way. And I hope the same thing for you. And, you know, really listen to what I'm saying and maybe even just jot down a couple of what you think your character defects are. They don't have to be deep. Patience, lying, you know, whatever, anger, you know, all those kinds of things. And you can even Google like character defects and you'll get a list of like 1,000. And just think about those and look at them and say, okay, now how can I practice the opposite? I knew this guy one time that for an entire month, he had like 30 character defects and he wrote them all down and he put them in a cup right next to his bed. And so every day he would pull one out and he would read it and then he would practice the opposite of that for that entire day. So if he was going to the gas station, he saw that there was a long line, he would hold the door open for 3 people to walk in before he did. And there was, you know, every day he would practice a different, you know, defect in his life that he wanted to improve because he wanted to remain teachable and become a better person. And that is something that I have done. I have done that exact exercise in my life, and it's so helpful. A lot of times we have to put action to the words in our lives, you know? So I want to continue to grow as a person, and I want to continue to just allow myself to flow because it's more about being a free spirit, and then you feel less, I don't know, tied to things that aren't that important if you work on those defects of character and you try to control the world less around you. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.